Then all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Everyone know where they are? Anyone not sure? Anyone just sit down and realize they wish they were somewhere else? What brings you all here? Who's here for the first time? Anybody? What brings you here?
An interest in Buddhist meditation and my friend Carol.
I know your friend Carol. She's a good friend.
Yes, she is.
Yes. What else? I saw another hand. Welcome. Yeah.
Just want to explore something new.
Learn something new. How old are you?
Me? 23.
23. How much do you know about you?
I think I know a lot.
You're here, so you might not know that much. That's this practice. You know, I always say it, especially when you're starting out, that we all want to learn about ourselves. You know, it helps, definitely. A little bit. And then we think, okay, well, I'm going to find some other thing to make it all work together. And ultimately, you're brand new to this, like first day. Yeah. So just remember this always. If you're still trying to figure you out and this life out 30 years later, remember all of this path is about figuring out yourself. So everything you learn about Buddhism, in my view and my practice, is about turning it back on and learning about why do I do what I do. And that's everything, you know. Mm-hmm. All along the way, you'll pick up bits and pieces of stuff that, you know, will make it seem cool, like you're learning about Buddhism, and that's fun, but it's all just going to always point back to you. So have fun with that. Yeah. Another hand, who's here for the first time and why? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say to learn about myself, but now I just feel.
And I believe you were really going to say that too. That's great. Yes. Well, it's good to learn about yourself. That's a good answer too, because now I can confuse you as well and say that it's good to learn about yourself, but ultimately Buddhism says there is no self. So good luck trying to learn about yourself for the next 20 years. Don't listen to what I just said. Right, it's somewhere in between that. But seriously, there's a Buddhist teaching called non-self, and the idea is that when we're new to Buddhism, we hear this concept of no self. We make it. And so there's plenty of chairs up here. Those of you who just came in and went straight to the back, there are lots of seats up here. If you want to come up, that'd be great. And I don't have to scream, and you'll be more comfortable. I know most of these friendly people, and they'll be quite fine if you step over them, and they might even move so you can have a seat on the end. You never know. The idea of non-self is that, as the Buddha taught, that we are completely different from how we perceive ourselves to be. So there's a great kind of Buddhist quote or expression says you have to get to know the self before you can get rid of the self, to go beyond that. So yeah, somewhere along those two things is really what we're working on. So I've read. Anyone else who's here for the first time and why? Yeah. Also Carol.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, don't apologize. Yeah. I've known Carol 40 years, so yeah. I was 37 at that time. Anyone else want to share why they're here before we start? All right. So we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You're going to hear sounds. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Don't expect anything. That's most important. Don't sit there wondering, is this working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. Posture. You want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. Place gently. On the chairs or benches, sitting up straight. Shoulders relaxed. I will guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, slightly open, mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. Eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Gently guide the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet. Wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit, nor the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than anyone in this room who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us in this room, regardless of where we come from or what we believe in and where we think we're going, our whole lives are filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens. More reactions. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to everything else that's happening throughout our days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's not closing your eyes and pretending you're sailing down a river and looking at all the birds and trees and flowers and thinking everything is grand. Life is chaos. Just listen. And this is learning to be okay within all of the chaos. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation isn't going to change that. Nor is Buddhist practice. It's going to make you become aware of what you think and what you say and what you do that leads to a life that is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess. So you can then actually make changes in your life and live a life that's a little more calm, a little more peaceful, a little more balanced, and not so crazy and hectic and stressful. And that's very difficult for most of us in this room because we've spent so much of our lives creating our identity and who we think we are, and then we have to play into that. And that's exhausting. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. And in reality, not much changes. I try not to complicate Buddhist practice. Try to just keep it very simple. You know, especially for those who might be new, there's 2,500 years worth of teachings. That's a lot of catching up you got to do, right? Lots of languages, lots of cultures, lots of different great teachers and masters and nuns and monks and gurus and all these kinds of things to learn from. Endless books. But ultimately it comes down to asking yourself every single day, what am I thinking? What am I saying? What am I doing? And I find that to be the most simple practice there is, and also the most challenging. Because, you know, it's a lot easier to be mean and angry to somebody and then read a Pema Chodron book and feel all warm and fuzzy and think life is great again. You know? What's really hard to do is to actually do those things that are warm and fuzzy and be that way in our lives. You know, I commented on, and really what I'm talking about now anyways is the idea, which is really great to hear both of the perspectives, you know, from new people, you know, to learning about something, Buddhism and meditation, to learning about the self. I talked about this at greater length, I think last week, but to touch on it briefly, really to kind of, I think, tie that together and where my mind's at right now anyways, is to understand that whatever perception, non-self doesn't mean we don't exist, but whatever perception we have of ourselves, and this is what I meant by talking about the identity that we are trying to play into, whatever perception we have of ourselves is not correct. It's just a view and a label and judgment that you've put on yourself that you've tried to play into your whole life. All the expectation, they don't have expectations of themselves that they've tried to accomplish in this lifetime. Anyone here met all of them? How do you feel about all that, you know? Somehow you've managed to live your life well enough to where here you are. Food to eat, clothes to wear, probably a place to sleep. Endless expectations you've set for yourself. And you even met some of them. That's amazing. But we don't tend to focus on those. We tend to look at all the things that we wish we could have or should have done and haven't done, and spend so much time in bitterness and anger and resent and regret. We have a story we tell ourselves, and that's our perception of ourselves. Then there's a story everybody else tells of us. What our family thinks of us, what our friends think of us, what our colleagues think of us, what strangers think of us. Often we worry more about what strangers think of us than those we know and love. And the stranger, you've never even seen them before. Right? The stories they say about you also aren't true. They're just their perceptions of you. So there's your perception of you, there's other people's perceptions of you. And then there's just you. And what is that you? And that's the non-self the Buddha was talking about, that you're never going to find. And you're never going to find what is yourself. You're simply an accumulation of your actions. Beyond a label or judgment or anything that we might call ourselves or anything that anyone else might call us. We are simply an accumulation of our actions. The word action, that's what karma is. Karma means action. Karma is not what we get. It's not what goes around comes around. It's not what we or they deserve. Karma is what you give into the world with body, speech, and mind. What you think, what you say, and what you do. And that's why we always say around here, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. You know how hard that is? Normal, how hard is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Impossible.
Impossible. Pretty close. That's the funny thing, is it's pretty close to impossible. But the beauty is to keep trying. All right? As Suzuki Roshi would say, you're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement. So there's no need to hate yourself so much, and there's also no need to say, yeah, I'm good, I got it all figured out, you go deal with your crap. You know, we all have to own ourselves also, the things that we say, think, and do and bring into the world. We have to own some of that. Yeah. We can't always blame others as much as we might like to. So, and never forget, there's somebody out there right now, and you know what they're doing? They're blaming you. So, we'll open up to questions. I always prefer to spend the rest of the time just responding to anything that you might have on your mind, questions related to meditation, Buddhist practice. And in my comment earlier about knowing Carol 40 years, and I said I was 37 when we met, she was 6. Just wanted to clarify that. Questions, meditation, Buddhist practice. Yeah, I'm back.
So I guess it's kind of funny to use a lot of I statements since you said there is no self at the beginning, but I guess I kind of realized about myself lately that I kind of had this expectation of change. I had this idea that there's always supposed to be progress in my life, and so things are the same now as they were 1, 5, 10 years ago, and I've done something wrong.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there because I got 3 hours of things to say just on what you said. First off, things are not the same they were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, at all. If I heard you correctly, you're saying that you're gonna say I a lot, even though I'm talking about no self. I, myself, my expectations. You are there, you exist, you are real, right? If you chopped your arm off, it's gonna hurt, you're gonna feel it, you are there. Physically, mentally, emotionally, you're there. You're just there very differently than you perceive yourself to be. You say that you have a lot of expectations and you don't see progress, right? I say that correctly?
Well, I have an expectation of progress. I assume that I should always be doing something different. Things should always.
You are always doing something different. Every moment of your life. The real question, which you asked about, and that's why I stopped you there because you already said enough, is the expectations. You have expectations of change. You don't need to expect change. Change is happening every single moment. My suggestion would be to try to stop having these lofty goals and expectations of yourself that you're supposed to be some grand person and embrace your life as it is. Because it's pretty darn good. You had the ability, miraculously enough, to get here. Did you eat this morning? I can't see you other than a glare because of the sun shining through the windows, but I'm assuming you have clothes on, correct? Somebody probably would have said something if you didn't, right? So you had food to eat, you had clothes to wear, did you sleep with the roof over your head last night? Yeah, and somehow you managed to be here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. You got your breath, my friend. There are people right now fighting when I always say at the end to just sit and breathe, okay? There are people all over the world right now just fighting to sit and fighting to breathe. But for us, that's not enough. That's not easy.
No, it's not.
But that's how I understand Buddhist teachings, is to get to a place where I can stop wanting, expecting, craving, and desiring anything other than the ability to end suffering within myself for the benefit of others. Right? I say this a lot, but one of the most beautiful things I've learned through this practice is to stop expecting anything from anyone ever. Find gratitude in just being able to sit and breathe, and an appreciation for the world and the life that you've cultivated and worked really hard for. Whatever you do, I don't even, I have no idea. But everyone in this room has worked really hard to get to where they are now. Maybe stop and appreciate that once in a while, instead of thinking it's never enough. Because someday the time's going to come where there is no tomorrow. And at that point in time, it's not going to matter what other grand expectations or goals you have, because you're not going to get there. Appreciate this moment, this day. Walk outside and be grateful that you can walk, because there's people all over the world that can't walk. It's finding appreciation in those simple little things, right? Yeah. Other thoughts, questions?
So related to that, I mean, I am in complete agreement, with the importance of acceptance, but and we can be just a little bit better, so obviously we need to know what is changeable and what isn't, but what of the things that we know we can change and aren't?
You ask me what are the things you can
I
change?
mean, what do we do with that, so the balance between accepting exactly, where we are.
Okay, got it.
And this little impulse to be better.
Got it. So I think a couple responses. About 12 years ago, I was in an argument with a good friend of mine, and the friend said something, and I said back, "That's just how I am." And the friend said, "Well, maybe you should change how you are." Right? And it was a real wake-up call that I had to recognize that a certain thing that I was doing, or a view, it was a thing, but it was more of a view that I was holding on to. And I was saying, "That's just how I am," wasn't helpful. Now, most important there was because that view was really based in greed. First, you have to look at what the Buddha said about why we suffer. Four Noble Truths. The first thing he said is life is filled with dukkha, suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, lots of tragedy, death, loss, things that are really heavy, and lots of simple things like, it's not the right weather today, or I don't like the way my shirt looks, or, I don't like mayonnaise on my sandwich. The simple little things that aren't going to ruin our lives. The second thing, which is really what you're getting at, the way I hear your question, is what is the cause of this suffering? And the Buddha called out the three poisons: greed, anger, ignorance. So at the root of, I think, what you're asking about, if you kind of bring it together, what I'm suggesting is that you begin to recognize everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do. So when you go through a typical day, how much time, you don't have to answer this, but just ponder it for everybody, how much time do you spend doing something and then stopping and reflecting and saying, why am I doing this? And I don't mean like, why the hell am I doing this? I mean like, why am I doing this? Why am I sitting here right now? Why am I eating this food right now? Why am I driving or walking right now? Like, to understand the intention, because everything I've learned in Buddhist practice is about what is the intention behind the action. And is that intention based in greed, anger, ignorance, the three poisons which cause suffering? Or is it based in generosity, compassion, wisdom? So again, back to your question, I think it really requires a lot of meditation. Not meditation to figure things out, but meditation to learn to get quiet. And then to be able to reflect on, why am I really doing these things? Because we're always running, often on the go so much. So very little time stopping, pausing, reflecting. What's the intention behind this? And look at that. And then when you look at that, you're able to see, okay, wow, I'm spending a lot of time doing things that are really kind of greedy, that I really think it's all about me. So maybe I should spend a little less time doing that and a little more time being generous and helping others. But you can't figure out the things I think you're asking about unless you stop and reflect and explore what are the things that are causing suffering in my life and in the life of those around me. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Does that address your question?
I think so.
Close enough?
Yeah.
Good.
It can be useful.
Good. That's useful is good. Yeah. Rarely do I address direct questions anyway, so the fact that I got remotely close is I'm good with that. Yeah. I don't have too high expectations. Yeah. Go ahead if you want to say something. No.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Reflection is key. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of suffering, what happens when the cause of your suffering is something outside yourself that's going on that you have no control over, but that really can't be stopped?
Great question. Put your seatbelt on and brace yourself for this answer. Right? Nothing outside of yourself. Did y'all hear the question in the back? Yeah. Nothing outside of yourself. You can argue with this, that's fine. Right? Just before you already with the arms crossed, resist my response. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, then let's just stick with the face. Before you resist my response, sit with it for a little bit and let me finish through it before you already shut it off, right? Nothing in our suffering exists because of anyone or anything else. It is simply our reaction to things that are happening that are outside of our control that we wish weren't happening. And then we choose, am I going to allow that to destroy? Because I'm hearing the way you asked it. You're asking is, how do you not suffer when things happening are outside of your control, which, oh, by the way, is life, everything. There's a couple things here. I'll get back to control in a minute, right? Do you like to control people, places, and things?
To a certain extent.
To a certain extent. So I'll take that as a yes, right?
This is something I can't.
My point is that life is learning, first off, to stop trying to control things.
Right.
That's the first part. Once we learn to stop trying to control every person, place, and thing around us, what I'm about to say becomes a little bit easier. But if you are like how I was most of my life, and many people in this room that wanted to and liked to and tried to and got really good at controlling everything, learning to let go of that and to do what I'm about to talk about is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Once you begin to let go of this idea that you can actually control things, you then start to embrace things as they are. So no matter what is happening in your life, no matter how much tragedy may be happening in my life around me, how much pain I could see people I know and love going through, right? I can't stop that. I can't control that. My suffering is not because of that. My suffering is because how I respond to that. And I can allow what's happening around me to make me angry and depressed and miserable and stressed and anxious and destroy my life, or I can embrace what is happening and find appreciation and love and gratitude in everything that we've ever even had. Because when we suffer because of loved ones around us, it's because we've had loved ones in our lives. Appreciate that. There's no way to change and get everything around us A lot of Buddhist practice is understanding that life is happening. And throughout our lives, we're going to experience tremendous pain and suffering, especially when it comes to loved ones and those we know and their suffering. And we want to help, right? Every person who's come here and been brought by a friend, for the most part, you know what their intention was in bringing you here? I can't speak for Carol, but you know what their intention was in bringing you here? Is, you know what? I have a friend and they're suffering. And I go to this meditation thing. I don't care if it's here, or I go to yoga, or I go to Buddhist class, wherever you go, I don't care. And you think, you know what? They're having a hard time. I'm going to call them and say, why don't you come along? Because this might help you. Right? That's what leads us to this stuff. But ultimately, what we have to learn to realize is that at the end of the day, when we wake up and we go to sleep, we are with ourselves, whether there's somebody physically there or not. People live in our hearts, they live in our minds. That is where we find peace. Now you can argue if you want.
No,
I just wanted to get all that out.
no, because you addressed it in terms of a loved one who has, who you hurt because there's something physical in their life.
Yeah.
That cannot be controlled.
Yes. Yes. A lot of people sitting in this room and a lot of people in these communities I've been around for the last 20 years are here because of the pain and suffering we are experiencing in our lives because of others' pain and suffering or loss or whatever stage that may be at. And the hard part about Buddhist teachings is, I always say Buddhism doesn't make life easier. It makes you see things for how they are. And how they are is that we have pain and loss in our lives. And this isn't a quick fix pill that makes that pain go away. It's embracing it and saying, yes, I have this pain. How am I going to be with it? What will I do with that pain?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, in the back.
Yeah, wow. What do you think of the Stoic phrase, amor fati?
Can you translate that for me into a language I might understand?
Love of faith.
Love of faith.
I don't accept your faith, but learn to love it.
Well, we don't have enough time to get into faith right now, but
Faith.
oh, fate.
Love of faith.
Love of fate. Like love of what's going to happen.
Whatever happens to you, learn to not only accept it, but to.
Well, what's sitting with me right now, your question was, what's my view on that? I don't like it. Here's why.
You don't like it?
I don't. But I'm just going to share what my initial reaction to was. And then, love of fate, like love of what's going to happen.
To you.
To me. Okay, right. What I want to work on as a practitioner is not learning to love what's going to happen. And you might be meaning this, but we're still looking at semantics. I want to learn to love what's happening now.
Yeah.
No, they're not. Not really. Love of what's going to happen and love of what's happening could be the same thing. I just want to clarify this. Learn to love this moment. And if you learn to love, and again, I'm a Zen practitioner, it's my background, it's what I spend most of my time reading, and I hate reading, I've read enough of it, right? Learn to love this moment. Nothing is going to happen in the future. This is going to, really not settle well with maybe a lot of people in this room. But there are only things that are happening. Right now, this is what is happening. This is it. If we all live 10 minutes from now, which let's hope we do, but there's many people in the world who 10 minutes from now won't be alive. So if we are all alive 10 minutes from now, then I hope 10 minutes from now, we can all love that moment. But I think it's a very clear, fine line in kind of distinguishing, am I going to learn to cultivate love for what's going to happen in the future, or am I just going to learn to appreciate what am I in right now? And always stay in this moment, because this moment is what's happening. I do love Stoic teachings. I think they're great. Other thoughts, questions anyone has in this moment? Buddhist teachings never simplified things for me.
You finally answered all our questions.
Saying I finally answered all your questions. It's great. Yeah. You'll be down there in 40 minutes asking me another one. Buddhist teachings have never simplified things for me. They've never made it easier. Buddhist teachings to me have actually made life, especially early on, if you're newer to it, and when I say newer to it, meaning if you're in the first like 5 years of Buddhist practice and you're like really working on this stuff, it's going to make your life more difficult for a while. Because the practice is to really look at what's going on. It's a lot easier to just kind of be ignorant and roam around and thinking all your views and all your emotions and all your thoughts and all your ways of being. It's a lot easier to just think you're correct. It's a lot easier to just kind of, judge and critique and be mean and gossip and do all these things towards others. That's easy. That's what we spent most of our life doing. The Buddhist teaching says, don't do any of that. Don't gossip, don't slander, don't judge, don't label, don't critique. Be with things as they are. That's really hard. But as you work through that, you begin to understand why the Buddha was teaching that. Yes.
I think it does make life easier when you learn to let go, though. So that's really what my practice is about, letting go of things. And
Sure.
So it's made my life incredibly easier. And I think the other thing, about meditation, I don't use it as an escape, but I do use it kind of as a refuge. When I meditate, I feel very safe and secure that I don't
Yes.
always feel that way in the world.
Yes.
Because we can't. So,
Right.
So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think that, you've heard me say this enough. I mean, I'm just one unenlightened, ignorant dude sharing my perception of these really beautiful teachings. And we all use meditation differently. And when I say things like that, this is for anybody who might be new, is that often people will come to meditation thinking that that's the thing that's going to solve all the problems. But you're absolutely right that allowing that time, as I alluded to earlier, allowing that time to get quiet and find, and you mentioned the word refuge, and that's what the practice is about. It's finding refuge, safety, comfort, protection in breath, in quiet, in stillness, in community, right? Finding that place, because there's a lot of places out there in the world that we just don't feel safe. And that's one of the reasons 13 years ago we started a crazy little Dharma Bum temple was let's find a place that anybody from any race, any religion, any sexual orientation, any gender identity, any ability, any cultural views, any religious views, I might have already said that, can just come and feel safe. Because there's not enough places in this world like that. And that's the hard part. Yeah. Yeah.
I find it extremely difficult to live in every single moment. But at the same time, when I have a difficult time, I find it much easier now through this practice to draw into that moment, to take care of that moment. And it calms me down completely. So that's something that I get out of this.
Definitely. It's funny, and I say this a lot, but if I can do half of the things I'm talking about, I'm good with that. To me, that's the practice is, and I just kind of made up half, but I'm good with that. I'd be good with 10%, I don't know, whatever. But the idea is that, the Buddhist teachings are pretty clear, and I'll kind of close with this thought. His teachings are very clear, they're very direct. They're very, I want to say simple, but they're really, the teachings themselves are pretty simple, right? They're just really hard to do all the time. That's the challenge. They're really simple, And so every Buddhist book you ever read will tell you, all their different kind of ways of taking what they learned from Buddhist teachings and how to integrate it into your life. And that's, one of the things that's really critical to understand, whether you're new or been at this for, 50 years, is to understand that there's what you learn about Buddhism and going to meditation and places like this. And then there's, okay, now how am I going to take what I'm learning and put it into my life? Because if we don't put it into our lives, then it's not really much use to us. So find what the simple core heart teachings are of the Buddha, right? Looking at, as I mentioned, the Four Noble Truths, suffering, the cause, and the ending of it. Overcoming that with generosity, compassion, wisdom. Looking at the Third Noble Truth, which is freedom from suffering, nirvana, a good day. Look at the Eightfold Path. I mean, really his entire body of teachings is the Eightfold Path. And that's having these correct, right views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. And all those things are available on Google for free. And he's really talking about the cultivation of wisdom, the cultivation of morality, right? The cultivation of our karma, of our actions. So, those are church bells. So I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most.